Welcome, Life Sciences, to another exciting life science lesson. As I said, always exciting to teach life science. We have finished our journey with excretion, the human excretion. And today's lesson, we're going to look at a bit of revision, right? So we're going to go over some important concepts that we need to look at, but we're looking at revision questions. We're going to see what kind of questions we can ask on this section. If we have a look at our mind map behind us, where are we going, right? Just a quick preview, each of our sections that we're going to revise, right? The whole concept first. What is excretion? Why do we need to excrete? Then we're going to look at the whole, the human urinary system. How do we excrete these things that we're going to learn about, nitrogenous wastes? How does our kidney excrete it? We've got to look at the anatomy, and then we've got to look at how it functions, right? How we take all these wastes at the end, we get this product called urine, and how important the kidney is in a lot of homeostatic processes. And then we're finally going to look at what should happen if our kidneys should fail. And as I said to you before, it is sometimes quite a challenging section. There's certain parts, especially how the kidneys function, when it can be quite challenging. Also, there's quite a bit of terms that are new terminology, trying to get what's in your head up here down onto paper, making it sound that you know what's going on. And sometimes that can be quite challenging. Speaking of terminology, right, as I say to you each time, right, there are new terms that come up. Do I understand the terms? Do I know the terms? Am I able to explain the terms? Can I use the terms when I need to explain things? So sometimes life science is a different language, and you need to be able to express yourself in that language, for that language to come across nice and clearly. So make sure you know the terms, understand them, write them down. If you don't, go through your books or the revision notes and make sure that you understand each of the terms. All right, so let's start off with this whole concept of what excretion is. Now, guys, very important, when we look at it, we're looking excretion, when we look at the word, we can't get it confused with some of the other things like digestion when we looked at digestive system. So what we're looking at is the concept, this was important, that we need to get rid of metabolic waste. And what metabolic waste was, our body does things, all right? So it's basically the normal things that we do, cellular respiration, right? Even trying to keep after digestion and anything that our body does, sometimes we have, all right, these metabolic waste products. And in order for us to work properly, we need to get rid of it. That is what excretion is, the removal of these waste products. And what are the kind of things that our body needs to get rid of? We need to get rid of water. And we say, oh, that's so weird, water, right? Get rid of it, my body needs water. But we need to understand that water can have effect on our blood pressure, right? So we need to make sure that we can control over there. We need to get rid of carbon dioxide. When we look at the gaseous exchange system, the reason why, all right, is that when carbon dioxide is with water, it actually forms an acid. And we know that our body doesn't like acid, right? Any changes in pH could have a negative effect. Then we have this whole concept of a nitrogenous waste. And what was a nitrogenous waste? Some of the things in our body, especially stuff that works in our liver, right, gives off nitrogen. And what happens to nitrogen is nitrogen can, right, be converted to ammonia. And ammonia in our body, when we look at this concept of ammonia, that's like handy Andy, right? It's poisonous for us. So all of these things, water, not poisonous, but can affect our blood pressure, carbon dioxide changes, all right, the pH in my body, these nitrogenous wastes, this nitrogen is detrimental to how my cells work, and I need to get rid of all of that. Okay, so what organs are involved? So when we look at excretion, there we go, the skin's going to help with that water part. And that's going to be, all right, where we're going to sweat. The lungs, they're going to get rid of the carbon dioxide, and with this, there's going to be a little bit of water. It comes out as water vapor. Right, our colon, when we ingest the feces that we, all right, get rid of, we have a little bit of bile pigments. Remember, bile was very necessary, right, in breaking down fats and helping fats, and that's going to go out of the colon. And then obviously the ones that we are going to really concentrate on now is the kidneys. And the kidneys are going to end up excreting the substance called urine, and in that urine is going to be some water, because that's how we do control our water balance, and there's going to be some waste products in that. So that's what we're looking at. So when we look at the excretory system, there are products, things when our body works normally, we have these waste products that we need to get rid of, and we have these different organs that are going to get rid of it. This section, however, we're going to concentrate on the kidneys. Now, if we have a look at what the urinary system is, and the urinary makes urine, all right? And what did we say that urine is? It's a combination of water and wastes. So I need to have a system, and this is really important. This system, my kidneys, need to filter the blood. What do I need to filter? Filter means I have good things in it and I have waste things. And I need to sort out the good. I need to keep the good and I need to get rid of the waste. So that's what a filter is. It separates the two. And then the next concept, a lot of the concept with the kidneys has got to do with this concept of homeostasis, a balance. There's certain things in our body that need to be kept in balance. And when we talk about certain things, we often talk about the cells, right? There are cells and they've got fluid around them. In order for the cells to work properly, things around them, their environment needs to be perfect. It needs to be in balance, right? And that is what homeostasis is about. And we're going to look at how does the urinary system, specifically our kidneys, have an effect on keeping things in balance. All right. So this is a diagram that you need to be able to label. This is the urinary system. This is the human urinary system. So what are we looking at? You need to be able to label it. This is the kidneys. Okay, very important. We have two of them. They're going to filter. There we go. And the urine is the end product, is going to come down these tubes called a ureter. They're going to be stored in a bladder, and then we're going to get rid of it on the outside by a urethra. Guys, just remember that you need to also know that the blood, what blood is coming into my kidneys and what the blood looks like on the way out. And as we go through the section, you will do that. Okay, this is a very important diagram. You need to be able to label it. You'll see a lot of the questions that we look at, you need to be able to label it. A lot of the questions are entangled with each other, but this would be a common question that we're going to have. This is the macroscopic, means I can see it with my eyes. I don't need a microscope, and that is going to be the macroscopic structure of the kidney. Okay, so just a quick few questions. And this section of work, they often like to ask multiple choice questions. So let's just warm up. A multiple choice question is always nice and easy. It says, all of the following belong to the urinary system except. Okay, so urethra, we know it does. Ureter sounds the same, and it does. The bladder, we've just looked at it there. Oh, then we get the prostate gland. And that is a gland only found in males that helps with reproduction. So it's definitely not going to be that. Okay, they're nice and easy just to get the brain going. And as I said, have a look at the question that I've put on the board for you. As soon as you see it, it's the macroscopic structure. It says to you, study the diagram below of the longitudinal section through a kidney and answer the questions that follow. Now, if we look at our very first question, 8 marks. 8 marks is quite a lot, and all they want you to do is to label it. As I said to you, right, so when we label it, you must know the macroscopic structure of the kidney. You must be able to label it. So here, you don't always have to write renal, but renal tells you it's the kidney. So here is the capsule. Do you have that? Can you remember on the outside is always the cortex. On the inside of the kidney is my renal medulla. It always looks like fish. Right here, I've got my pelvis. Then I've got my calyx. And you see, guys, if you don't study this, then I'm not going to know what it is. This is my ureter, not my urethra. And how do I know which of my blood vessels are? I'm going to look at the arrow. So going out is always a vein, and that's my renal vein. And going in is always going to be my artery, because an artery goes to. Okay, guys, so you see 8 marks. Maybe different questions, 1 or 2 marks here, but know your kidney. Those are nice, easy study things, right, to know, be able to label it. Okay, we're going to have a quick wee break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, Life Sciences. I hope you had that wee break. I'm going to love saying that. And when the section is finished, then I'm going to have to change it. I hope you just shook all the muscles, cleared the head, and let's get back to it. The next section, I would say, is probably one of the most important sections when it comes to looking at how the kidney functions. And this is where we look at a structure, right, called the nephron. As I said again, a lot of key words here. Go over those key words, listen when I use them, right? Can you put them in the right frame of mind? Just before the break, we looked at the big concept of the kidney. Guys, remember, we are going it quite fast because this is a bit of a revision, right? Trying to just get all those things going again. But when it comes to the kidney itself, unlike the heart or any of those where the whole organ had to work, the kidney actually relies on a million of these little structures, and they are called nephrons. So imagine if I put maybe 500,000 into one kidney and 500,000 into the other. It's not the whole kidney that does the work. What we're looking at is this little structure over here, the nephron, is going to be responsible for making urine. Now, I'm just going to use a little example. Imagine if each of them make 1 drop of urine. If you've got all of these hundreds of thousands making drops of urine, can you see what's going to happen? The urine moves into the pelvis, and that urine is going to move down the ureter to the bladder. So when we look at this function of the microscopic, now remember, microscope means it's very small. So if you dissect the kidney, you're not going to see these structures. What you do see are these lines. All right, those are all the millions of tubules that are lining, that form the lines of the medulla. But you've really got these little units. These are the units that we're talking about, and it's quite important that you understand the diagram. Again, like the macroscopic structure of the kidney, can you label it? And you need to understand 2 concepts. The first concept is that the blood is going to bring everything into the kidney. There's going to be everything inside the blood, right? And this is going, concept in here is called the glomerulus. And what is going to happen is the kidney, the blood is going to move into these tubules, all the blue here. It's a series of tubules, it's like a road, right? And at the end here we have this concept of urine. So the blood brings it in, the kidney, the nephron, is going to filter. There's that word, filter. And what does filter mean? Some of the stuff I want to keep, some of the stuff I want to get rid of. And the things that I'm going to want to get rid of are going to be there at the end. Right, so the next, when we go look at this three concept, I'm quickly going to go through it with you. I would say if I even look at the past papers and the questions, a lot of the questions are related to how this works, right? What comes in? How does this nephron, the structure in the kidney, how does it filter, right? What is the process that it follows? And the three processes, I've just got a simple little diagram over here, right? The three processes are glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Sometimes we also call it tubular excretion. Now these words very often say exactly what is happening. So glomerular filtration, this structure over here, is called the renal corpuscle. Some of you might call it the Malpighian body. And basically what happens, what we're looking at, blood is going to come in here. We're going to filter. Basically, what can travel through the blood and into these tubules comes into this process, and that is called ultrafiltration. And the whole concept of the afferent and the efferent being wider brings in this ultrafiltration. Okay, we go ultrafiltration, right, where filtration happens under pressure. And what happens is things move into these tubules, and they move. Tubular reabsorption, reabsorption. There are things, for example, glucose. There are maybe vitamins. There is amino acids, things that our body still needs that move out of the tubules into the blood, reabsorption. And then tubular excretion or secretion. Guys, you must remember, if I had to draw this blue line, there's blood vessels all over the show. Right? When you get to the very last point over here, there are still waste products in the blood. So when we get to the last part of the tubules, any waste product that still is in our blood is going to move into the tubules. So what we have done at the end over here, the final process, I have got water and I've got waste products. And my waste products are usually those nitrogenous products with maybe some colorant, or I've had a preservative, or I've had a headache tablet, right? Those kind of things. And that then is called urine. And anything else that my body still wanted, I reabsorb. So that's very important that you understand those concepts. Okay, let's have a look at a few of the questions that we can find on this section. Now, as soon as you have a look at this question, what do you notice? All right, first of all, it's the urinary system. So we're looking at the whole system as a whole, right, which lend us to our first part that we are looking at. So this diagram shows the structure of the human urinary system. There we go. Right, next question. Label parts A, B, and E. Now, A, I've split the board over here. These are nice, as I said, studying questions. You need to be able to know your diagrams. A is the ureter. Don't get it confused with the urethra. B is a kidney. And I know E is my bladder. So as I said to you, each of these sections can have questions that are going to intertwine and be right. linked with each other. Now the next question. Give one difference between the composition, right? What does composition mean? It simply means what is in the blood. So now you need to have a look. Give one difference between the composition of blood in C and D. Now what you need to look at first is the arrows. So number C is going away from the kidney, all right? Number D is going to the kidney. So if we have a look at what is in it, that's going to give you an idea. So one difference. What is going to be in number D? All right, number D is going to the kidney. So if it's going to the kidney, I want to say, yes, it's got nitrogenous waste. So lots of nitrogenous waste. You can put here high amounts of nitrogenous waste. So which would mean, if you give one difference between it, that because it goes in, the kidney is going to filter the blood that is going back here should have very low or little volumes of nitrogenous waste. Okay, can you see that? Okay, so what else should it have in it? That to me would be the biggest difference. I don't want you to talk about, you can maybe go this route as well, but I wouldn't do that, all right? You can also maybe say that it is high in oxygen. And the reason being, it's coming straight from the lungs, right? So it's high in oxygen. Here it's going to be high in carbon dioxide because cellular respiration has occurred. But if I was to say to you the most correct answer, this is the one I'm going for. I want you to tell me that the one going in, which is my aorta, is going to have far more nitrogenous waste than the one going out. Okay, now here we go. The part labeled B consists of millions of microtubules called nephrons, where blood is being filtered and purified. A part of the nephron is the Malpighian body or renal corpuscle. Oh, guys, look here. Draw a labeled diagram of a renal corpuscle. So we're going to have to draw a diagram. So what do we draw? We're going to draw, let me go this way. I'm drawing it the wrong way around, I know, but I want to put the labels. I'm going to give it a heading. And what am I going to draw? Okay, I shouldn't, let me go back again. Oopsie, there we go. Okay, blood vessels. Here, we're going to draw one thick and one thin. And these are going to be my glomerulus. Here's my renal corpuscles. Right, and what do I want to have over here? I want to write podocytes. Okay, there we go, podocytes. Here's my, all right, Bowman's capsule. There we go. Here is my glomerulus. So guys, being able to draw as well is going to be as important as being able to discuss the different things. Do I know what happened during the kidney? Right, so there's lots of things. Please try and get past papers. Do as many of these questions as possible. Welcome back, Life Sciences, from your wee little break. Right, we're carrying on. We're looking at the revision of the kidney. Now, what we're looking at now, we're concentrating, if we have a look at the mind map, we've looked at the macroscopic structure of the kidney. We looked at the microscopic structure, how it filters. But one of the most important aspects or functions of the kidney is this homeostasis, and we often refer to it as osmoregulation. Now, as I said to you, a lot of words again that we're going to use, go over all of the different terms, the terminology, what we need to use, it's going to be really important that you understand the concepts here. So when we look at this concept, it's a concept that you've looked at a few of your sections. If you look at gaseous exchange, if you look at digestion, is this whole concept of homeostasis. And as we said, when we look at it, it's about the environment. So the cells in the body, right, they are bathed in this tissue fluid. And in for order this fluid, let me write here, tissue fluid, that you can remember what it is. Some of you might use the word interstitial, right? I find tissue fluid much easier to remember. There are a lot of things that need to be in balance. That's what stasis means, and homeo as well. Homo means balance, the same. And what we need to look at when we're looking at this environment, there are certain things, the water content, the pH, and the salt content, and to a certain extent when we do the glucose content. But when we look at water, when we look at pH, and when we look at salt, this is going to be the role of the kidney. The kidney's role is to make sure that any time, if any of these balances are off, that there's certain regulatory methods that can come in, as you can see our seesaw here, to bring it back into balance. Now, what do the kidneys need to do? The kidneys are going to make sure that our blood pH is right. So as I said to you, it's really important, right? Because why? pH, our enzymes, all right, are very specific to pH. They're sensitive to pH, and any big changes are going to have an effect on how the body is going to function. Then as I said earlier, there are two parts that the kidney really needs to make sure it is. Number one is the water. Okay, how balanced. Water in our body has a big effect on osmolarity, where things move, on our blood pressure, right? So osmolarity, right? It has effect on our blood pressure. And we need to make sure that this content, and we make sure that don't dehydrate. So the water is really important. The same with the salt. The salt has exactly the same effect on our blood pressure, on the osmolarity of the cells, how water moves in and out. And these two concepts over here brings in the word osmoregulation. Right, and if you can remember, what is osmo? Osmosis. And osmosis is how water moves. Osmosis, let me get it right. And that is how water is going to move from a high concentration to a low concentration. And how did we get water to move? Very often we fiddled with the salt content. Water will always move from a high water concentration to a low concentration, and salt plays a huge big role in that. So as you can see, the kidneys play a huge big role in this whole concept of osmoregulation. Okay, so what do I need to know? First thing here, we don't need to know all these things, but all that I need to know is in the kidneys, how do I control pH? All right, I'm going to get rid of hydrogen. Okay, so if my body is too acidic, if I've made too much, all right, acid, all that I do, all right, is I put hydrogen into my urine, and then my pH is going to drop. You don't have to worry about all these things, but the basic concept is here, how do I control pH? I just take from there, go into the tubules, and my urine will have quite a lot of hydrogen in it. And that is how I'm going to control the pH. Okay, guys, this is a really important question. Is this, how do I use hormones? And here we look at the hormone ADH. Here is my hypothalamus, and this, if I could say, is my thirst center. So if I, for some reason, have had too much salt, or even if I dehydrated, it's a hot day, it's sweating, I'm exercising, and I'm not drinking enough water, I need to make a plan. My hypothalamus is going to kick in these little receptors. It's going to tell the pituitary gland, hey guys, you need to secrete this antidiuretic hormone, and that antidiuretic hormone is going to go to the tubules, my collecting ducts, and it's going to say, open up, right? And what's going to happen, let's change the color. Water is going to move out of the collecting ducts. So the ADH works on the collecting tubules. And what happens, instead of me getting rid of a lot of urine, my body actually takes it in. Very important. Remember, we don't want to dehydrate. We want our levels of water to be constant. Then we looked at the next thing. On top of each of our kidneys is a gland called the adrenal gland. And what the adrenal gland does, was a few things that it does, but looking at the kidney, it secreted a hormone called aldosterone. And aldosterone is very important in controlling our salt balance. Right? Have we had too much salt? Do we have too little salt? Right? So if I've got too much, I must put the salt into my urine. If I have too little, I've got to make sure that I take the salt back out again. So when it comes to that, it's quite an important concept. Now, if you have a look what I have done, all right, I'm afraid to say to you that this is an essay, all right? This is an essay question, and I'm going through a few of the past papers. I did notice that this section on osmoregulation was often asked as an essay. And now, when we look at an essay, guys, your essay, right, is usually out of 17 marks, okay? 17 marks. So what they're usually looking for is they're usually looking for around about 14 points. And then your last 3 points that you're going to get is how well you wrote your essay. Now, we might not be able to go through every single part of the essay, but the first thing we're going to do, we need to break it down into parts. There's 2 parts of the essay. Describe how the salt and water levels are maintained in a dehydrated person who consumed high concentrations of salt. Now, if I was to write this essay, I would put it into 2 parts. The first part, I would deal with the dehydration. And as soon as we have a look at the dehydration, I want you to explain there the whole concept of the ADH hormone. So what are we looking at here? You need to say the obvious things, all right, is that first of all, if you are dehydrated, it must be picked up. So there's the word osmoreceptors. Right, we're looking for those things. Osmoreceptors pick up that there is too little water. Right, so there we go. You're telling me the person is dehydrated. I want to know then that what is going to pick it up? The hypothalamus. All right, and I want to then know, what does the hypothalamus do? There are 2 things it's going to do. Number 1, it's going to make you drink water because it's your thirst center. All right? And number 2, what it's going to do is it's going to secrete, all right? Secrete, not excrete, ADH. There we go. And you are then going to carry on telling me, what does ADH do? ADH then goes to where? Right? The collecting tubules. And what does it do? Right? It makes it more permeable to water. And what happens to my water levels? They increase in my body, and that's how I'm going to hold them in. The second thing you need to talk about is if I have too much salt. And here you're going to say that receptors, all right, are going to pick up that there's too much salt. And who is going to pick it up? Aldosterone. And what aldosterone is going to do, it's going to decrease in secretion, because aldosterone brings salt into the body, and because it decreases, what happens? All right, less reabsorption of salt. So what happens to the salt? Increase of salt in my urine. Right, so if when the essay, what have I done? Broken the essay down answer the question, what happens if I'm dehydrated or the ADH? And what happens if I have too much salt? You speak to me about the aldosterone. I know the essays are a little bit freaky because it's 17 marks and you go, oh, all right, but the more you practice, the better it's going to become. All right, that's all we have time for now. All right, we're going to take a wee break and we'll see you right after this. Welcome, Life Sciences, back from your wee break. I think that's the last time I'm allowed to say it. I'm going to miss it. All right, so we're looking at the revision of the excretory system. We're briefly going over a few concepts that are really important. We are skimming through it, but as I said, this is a revision series. If you got a little bit lost, maybe go through the other lessons, etc., that you can maybe catch up on. Right, just if you're very unsure of what happens. So what we've done so far, we've looked at the whole urinary system, all the different organs that make up. We've looked at this whole concept of how do we make urine, right? What happens, our blood, how we filter it. We take all the things that are in blood, and filtering means we take out what we still need to keep in our body, and anything that we don't need, we now are going to excrete, get rid of, in this form of urine. Then we also went through the concept of homeostasis, how important it is that the kidneys have certain balancing functions, right? It's very important, and the kidneys are responsible of controlling the pH of our blood, right? And very important, this whole concept of osmoregulation, osmosis, water, how water moves. And there it's really important where the kidneys are able to balance the water, right, the water levels and our salt levels in the body. We don't want either of those to become too high or too low, so we need to put mechanisms in place. Now the last section that we look at is what happens when our kidneys no longer work. Kidney failure, right? So sometimes with diseases, etc., our kidneys, even just getting old, our kidneys no longer work, and we need to see what could be the possible options there. Again, if we're looking at the terminology, remember here, not so much, right, but a few terms that obviously you need to become familiar with. So guys, the most important concept that we're looking at over here is that when the kidneys fail, this is the problem. We're not getting rid of our waste products. So what happens is all these things we spoke about, all right, these nitrogenous wastes, right, so the nitrogen, those nitrogenous wastes, sometimes maybe we had drugs in our system. When I say drugs, I also mean headache tablets and those things, right? We could have had colorants or preservatives, any of those things. I'm not going to write them down, but the most important thing is we need to get rid of these nitrogenous wastes. So if the kidneys don't do that, that could be a problem. The second thing that happens is, right, that the kidneys are not going to control the water and salt balance. And this is going to have a huge impact, right, on our blood pressure. That's going to be quite important. As I said to you before, this could have a huge big thing on our blood pressure. Let me put the R in, there we go. My spelling is terrible. And what this ultimately does, have a look, is it's going to put a strain on our heart. And our heart, obviously, if the strain is on the heart could stop working, could go into cardiac arrest. So it's not only the kidneys, but the heart that also can fail. So what do we need to do? Okay, there are a few options, but other than that, what could cause the kidneys to fail? Now remember, these things, right, are sometimes, they're not run-of-the-mill things, as I said, and it doesn't mean that because you get a bacterial infection that your kidneys are going to fail. This means sometimes that you're going to get a bacteria, the infection that could be so bad that it damages the kidneys. That's what we're talking about over here. All of these things are like on the other scale, right, of what could possibly happen. Right, over here, overuse of painkillers. You know, some people are unfortunately addicted to the painkillers, and those painkillers have an effect on the kidney, because that whole filtering thing that it does, it could strain on the kidneys, and the kidneys obviously could get damaged, and if the kidney's damaged, they're going to go into failure. Aging, unfortunately, it happens. People get older. The older you get, the less the things work. It's how it is, all right? And it's terrible to say, but with aging, things don't always work as well. And what could happen is the kidneys could fail, right? Because they just can't regenerate. This little ugly dude at the bottom that I've got a picture, this is a parasite that is sometimes found in water, non-running water, right? So always, if you want to swim somewhere, make sure it's flowing water. And this little parasite, it's got a scientific name, but we call it bilharzia. And what it can do, unfortunately, it can burrow through the walls of our blood vessels and into our kidneys. And once again, it can damage the kidneys. So what are our options, right? When it comes to the failing of kidneys, you need to understand, you're looking at here, what are your options? Now, the two options I'm going to speak about are going to be the first one, right, is you need to understand the concept of dialysis. And the whole concept of dialysis is that you go to a medical facility. Some people who are wealthy can afford to hire a machine, right, but lots of people can't. And you basically have to go somewhere, they hook you up to a machine, and they literally take your blood out and they filter it. So a machine, if you're looking at over here, right, this whole concept takes over, right? There's the picture of the machine at the top over here. It takes over the function of your kidneys. So what you have to have, the same thing as your kidneys work with this osmosis, moving from a high concentration to a low concentration. That's exactly what's going to happen with dialysis here as well. You're going to have to go up to a machine, right, and what's going to happen is it's going to filter your blood for you. This is generally a temporary measure, right? You cannot go on it constantly. Your body at some time might reject it. You've got to have certain drugs that need to go into your system. Also, you need to think at the positive versus the negative. Ultimately, the machine might not be able to take over from your kidneys altogether. The second option that is available to you, right, is this whole concept of a kidney transplant. So what happens, somebody, a donor, all right, somebody who has died or a living donor, they might, because you've got two kidneys, they might donate one. That is where they give you their kidney, right, a living kidney. And what they then do is they transplant it. They put this healthy kidney into your body. What's quite interesting most of the time is people don't realize is very often the ones that don't work, they stay in your body. What they do over here, they put the working one and they attach it to all the different blood vessels, and you have the one working kidney. All right, so what kind of questions can we ask here? A dialysis question is a nice question. You'll see here I've put a dialysis question in here for you, and just a whole understanding what the whole concept is. Now the question says, an extract on renal failure, all right, and its treatment is given below. So here we've got, all right, the little bit below over here, and this is where the diagram represents a dialysis machine. So this whole diagram over here, right, is the whole dialysis machine. I don't want to write too much here because we're going to go into the next thing. Okay, at the bottom over here, so I've put the diagram in, but there is a little bit of a blurb. It's a little bit of a reading piece about, right, the dialysis. And it said here, kidneys can become so damaged that they no longer function properly, and we say that the person has renal failure. Right, so that's given us a definition of what renal failure is. People with severe renal failure can be treated by dialysis. So it's telling you what this is, using a dialysis machine, and it tells you that the machine purifies the blood. Dialysis is the separation of molecules by size, the smaller molecules diffusing through the tubing, selectively permeable membrane in the place of your nephron, and this process takes between 3 and 6 hours and needs to be done 2 or 3 times a week. Right, so we have a diagram and we have, all right, a little bit of an introduction of why somebody would want it. Okay, the first question, describe what renal failure is. And as I said to you, very often, if I read the little piece, sometimes we don't read what is given to us. Any kind of picture, any kind of reading piece over here has information that is going to help you. And if we look at the very first line, right, if we skim, there's renal failure and there's renal failure. And if we go back to the key words, what does the first line say to us? Kidneys can become so damaged that they no longer function properly. I'm not going to rewrite all of that, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to take this sentence out and you're going to write it in your answer, right? Because that is going to be the answer. It's right, it's there. It's in your thing. So 1 mark for telling me that they're damaged and no longer they function properly. It's not necessary for you to write it in your own words or anything. The text is there for you to be able to use. Okay, the next question asks you, which process is illustrated in the diagram below? Now, if I jump 2 slides back, all right, and I go over here, it said to me there that the diagram below represents a dialysis machine, all right, and we know that a dialysis machine is needed for somebody who, all right, is going to need dialysis. So what is the process called? The process is called dialysis. Right, and here it's going to say at what point in the diagram, A or B, you need to find it. Here's A, here's B. Right, would you expect the highest concentration of urea? Now urea is waste. Right, so where would be the highest concentration? Guys, here we go, all right, from the patient's blood vessels, number B. Okay, I'm afraid it looks like our time has run out, right? There's lots of practice papers that you need to be able to look at. The government websites have got lovely old past papers. Practice those, see the kind of questions they can ask you. It's really important that you are able to do that. That's all for us today. Have a good time. Bye-bye.